So I'm pleased to be joined with 180, and you are a Christian artist. We spoke to you a couple years ago, and we'd love to kind of get your journey of how you started music, for people that maybe aren't super familiar with your music, because you had a new album that actually came out today. So,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that in just a couple minutes. But yeah, for someone that maybe isn't familiar with your music, what did that journey kind of look like for you?
Yeah, no, I grew up in a musical family, I guess. My grandmother she sang in a quartet. I've got an older cousin who was in rap music and some uncles who did some music as well. So um, it was kind of always a thing. It's just for me, I couldn't figure out how to play a guitar, and my singing voice is horrible. So I learned how to add some rhythm to it and make it work for me.
Yeah. And how would you describe your music then for somebody? Like like as far as sound wise, what would you say it was
Yeah,
like?
that's a great question. So it's I would say it's kind of on its own in terms of like the variety and flexibility that I try to make sure I put on every album. Uh, we're always really intentional about trying to create something that everybody can enjoy. So if you don't like the song that's playing now, just give it a couple minutes. The next one's for you, right? So that's always been the approach. So I would say, like with this album, there's a very rock heavy track on there. There's some smoother, like relaxed stuff, and then there's some heavy hard hip hop type stuff on there as well. So yeah, I would say it's a hard question to answer. I would just say my music style is that of variety. Yeah, that's where I'll land it.
And so yeah, like you said, your album is called Royalty, so it came out today. And what is maybe like what's a message that you're hoping that listeners are going to take away from it after they listen to it?
Yeah. So the kind of the scripture behind it is First Peter 2:9, where it talks about being a royal priesthood and of people belonging to God, that we may declare the praises of Him who called us out of darkness and into His wonderful light, which is kind of the story of my life. And so yeah, that's where the name and title comes from. The other inspiration for this project was my pastor was preaching, and he was talking about how sometimes we've allowed ourselves to kind of start our story as believers. We've allowed ourselves to start our story at Genesis 3 or whatever, when the fall happened, and we forget that Genesis 1 is where it starts, and we are created in the image of God, and we're special, and we matter to Him. And so I just wanted to kind of work on bringing us back to that and reminding us we're royal, like we're children of the king, not a king. We're children of the king. And so I wanted to create something that kind of led us back to that.
And you just mentioned a second ago saying that your life has kind of inspired this too. So how has that, like, for maybe it's someone that hasn't heard your testimony and your story and just kind of that transformation that happened? Like, can you
Yeah,
just maybe talk about that a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. So for a lot of people, if anybody who's been listening to my music for a little while, they know I'm a Teen Challenge graduate. I went through the Teen Challenge program, which is a faith-based rehab program. I went through that program in 2010 and graduated in 2011. Coming out of a heavy addiction to drugs, and I've experienced homelessness, and when I went into that program, it was just off a suicide attempt as well. Um, so yeah, it's really like a night and day kind of thing for where I was to where I am now. And just like I said there, being called out of darkness and into His wonderful light. Like, I'm really grateful for uh, where God has positioned me in life now, because I was in darkness, and I'm walking around in that wonderful light now.
And how else would you say that your faith plays into your music and kind of in your songwriting and things like that?
Yeah, it's everything. So one thing I say to artists, even like if I'm just talking to a younger artist or whatever, right? One of the things I always say is, I respect authentic music. So basically, you know, you don't have to, for me to listen to it, you don't have to make music for God or about God, but be honest about who you are in that music, you know. And so for me, this just happens to be my lifestyle, what I believe, and what's important to me. So it dictates all of my music. It's the reason why I do it. I believe that music is probably the greatest conduit to get to people. And so, you know, I use it for that reason. And you know, I share it with people all the time. Like I could take or leave music, but for me, it's that it's an avenue that is used and widely spread to be able to reach people with the gospel. So I found it to be you know, for anybody who's listening that's into return on investments, it just seemed like a great return on investment. If you know, I make this music and lots of people get to hear it. People like you will reach out and we'll talk about it and get it to more people, and then I get to share hope. You know, I affectionately call myself a neighborhood hope dealer, and so it's a great way to kind of communicate and reach people.
And is there maybe one specific song on the album that, maybe every time you hear it, just kind of brings fond memories or something that you're just maybe extra proud of?
I know that this question gets asked in every interview, and that's so hard to make me pick one of my children like that. But anyway, I'll play along. Um, I don't know. There's a couple on there. Mighty Good is one of my absolute favorites, featuring True Serva from Minneapolis. And then Bridge Over Water, featuring Fresh IE would be. And I know Fresh IE is definitely paying attention and listening to this interview. So there, your name was said, my brother. Um, but uh, but yeah, Bridge Over Water special just because you know, Fresh IE's basically raised me in this music industry. He's been my big brother. He's been my mentor. He's also been my closest ally and friend as I navigate and figure this thing out. And so we wrote this song called Bridge Over Water, just letting, you know, each other and the people in our lives know that, you know, we're here, you know, and we got
Mhm.
your back and we'll be here. So that was a really special song to do with him, if that makes sense, because you know I've always considered myself his little brother, you know, and so to be able to and I mean he's never treated me like that. Let me share that too. Um, but I've always had a certain reverence for him, like just a respect level that you know this is somebody who graciously opened the doors for me to kind of learn this thing, and he taught me ministry before music, you know, like all of that stuff. So um my career is where it is now because of a lot of the things that he taught me. And so to be able to go into this song or this project like knowing I'm coming in as a peer, you know what I mean, like knowing, okay, I finally graduated, and again, this isn't a timeline that anyone else has put on me but myself, right? But for me personally to kind of feel like, all right, like I feel like I can go with them, you know. And so, and in doing it, also reminding the people that I'm pouring into now, and trying to do the same thing he did for me, to remind them that I'm here and I got your back. So yeah, I'd say Mighty Good and Bridge Over Water are my two tops.
Yeah. It probably changes every time that somebody's going to ask you to, right?
Man,
So,
the toughest question because I don't have like normally most questions I have like a dedicated answer for them, right? Like you're
yeah.
prepared, you know what you
Yeah.
know, that one is tough every time because I don't know, like the why changes every time too. So it's not only the song changes, but my reason for it that day changes too. So I hope that's the case for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that and, kind of speaking to what you were just talking about, like even with Fresh IE. Can you maybe just touch on the importance of having a mentor and, having someone to kind of help guide you through? And now you can probably help do that for other young artists. A minute ago you're saying that you would tell them to like be authentic, but maybe what's the importance of having somebody to look up to and help guide?
Yeah, I think it's huge, like things I didn't know coming into this that I've learned over the years. Just on even how, because there's ministry and there's business, and the two are not the same. But they both have to work together if you want to do something like this long term and be able to, raise a family and all of that and still do it. And so that was an area where I needed guidance. I needed leadership. I still remember the first trip I ever took with Fresh IE, and we were sitting in a hotel, and we were talking, and I just said honestly, like, what I need from you is, at this point, he was into this over 10 years longer than I was, right? So I was just like, at this point, I just need information. Like, I need knowledge. Like, there's 10 years worth of mistakes that I don't want to have to make, and he's always been like really open with doing that for me. And when my first album came out, when we released U-Turn, he produced it, he mixed it, mastered it, packaged it, the whole nine. He did every bit of it, and all he charged me was do it for someone else. So um, that's an obligation, like mentorship. Obviously, he saw it and what the value is in it, and really did a good job and worked hard to instill it in me so that I can make sure that I'm doing the same thing. And that's kind of the relationship I have with the artists I interact with now. I don't want anything from you except to see you succeed. So do it for someone else, right? So yeah, mentorship, I would say, is the most underrated but most valuable piece in all of this. And it's not just music. I mean, in everything. Like, people who have been there before you and have been through some things, um, they're so valuable. And rap is a little bit different in that it's a very competitive sport, and so you know, that wasn't something I expected. It wasn't something that I knew was going to happen or any of that, right? It was just, it's me. I've got to, if I'm a solo artist, then I'm a solo artist, and I got to go figure it out and do what I got to do. So building that relationship to where now, I mean, Fresh is one of my closest friends now. Like, that's actually my brother, which was built because of that. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, before we even got to this point, if someone was to say, who's your favorite rapper, it's Fresh IE, period. That's just, and still to this day, I say the same thing. And it's funny because I have a tour manager who travels with me, and he always laughs. He's like, you rap too, right? Like, you can be your favorite. I know, man, but this guy, like, every time I work with him, he kills me on my own songs, even sometimes. Like, he's that talented. So yeah, it was the mentorship and having somebody that's that gifted to be your mentor, because that's another piece too, right? Like, a good mentor is somebody that the people that they're mentoring can actually trust and believe that they know what they're talking about when they're talking about it. And I mean, you guys are in Winnipeg, it's you'll be hard pressed to find a more multi-talented artist than a Fresh IE, and so for me, that mentorship is instrumental in where I'm at now and what I'm doing. And you'll see a lot of, like, the way my career moves. You'll see a lot of similarities in from mine to what he's done.
And so I'm getting back to your album as well, so that came out today. And if someone wants to follow along with other updates that are coming in the future, other releases, everything else that you have going on, where's the best place for them to follow?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. And my I can't remember what to call it, but my thingy on Instagram is at 180 underscore KMF, and 180 is spelled out ONE 8 TEA, and underscore KMF for Kingdom Music Family. That's where I'm most active. I mean, obviously, you can track me down on Facebook as well. I pretty much do the same posts on Facebook as I do on Instagram. So if you get to one, you pretty much got them both. But yeah, and all the music's on Spotify.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're excited to, hear music coming in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm talking to Fresh. I'll be out in Winnipeg soon enough.